One of our most popular shows at Belgravia Gallery is that of pop art, which we do every January. And here you can see a wonderful selection of art by some of the most famous names of the 20th century. We have works here by people as diverse as John Lennon, Peter Blake, Andy Warhol, Robert Indiana, and a range of other artists whose work is luminous from the second half of the 20th century. In his Sources of Pop Art series, Peter Blake has gone back to the origins of pop art. Much of it is in contemporary culture in the United States and in Britain. And this example behind me shows some of the icons of the 1950s. Elvis as a youngster here, Mickey Mouse, Shirley Temple in her curly-haired best, Wonder Woman, the imagery of the very strong images of both the British flag and the American flag. Cartoons, this wonderful piece here of Mickey Mouse was also drawn into this picture, giving a strong American feel of fun and brightness and cheer, especially in the post-war years. Peter Blake's work ranks amongst the finest examples of late 20th century art. No one is more famous than Andy Warhol for using consumerist imagery. And in this case, the advert for Paramount is a very good example of his work, as is the advertisement for Campbell Soup, which has just gone everywhere. Also Brillo, a whole range of consumer items were just changed into art. I'm standing in front of one of the most famous pieces of pop art ever, and certainly the most popular album ever produced, and that is the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Bands. It defined an era. It was the view that we all had of the 1960s. It was fun and bright and wonderful. And Peter Blake created this for the Beatles and was paid the grand sum of £200 with no royalty for any future use. And it seems a very cheap price for such an amazing piece of art. In this very ironic piece, it was full of humour and full of brightness and encapsulated that time. Not just included the four Beatles themselves, but also cardboard cutouts of themselves, surrounded by luminaries of the last few hundred years. These people included Dylan, Marilyn Munro, famous composers like Beethoven. The whole piece just puts a smile onto our faces because it helps us to remember a really golden time of the 60s and early 70s. Okay, Peter, so in a way, these pieces are, they tell the story of pop art. You've used the sources of pop art. So how did you come to these pieces?
Well, it was a way of making a kind of a new pop art, but with the excuse of it being called the sources of pop art. I made the images which the pop artists might have seen to inspire them to make their art.
You seem to like Elvis Presley quite a lot in these images. And
well, Elvis recurs quite often, not because he's my favourite rock and roller, but if you're thinking in terms of icon, he is the main rock and roll icon, so yes, it's always Elvis.
Yeah. And you've also got James Dean in some of them as well.
I mean, some of the pop artists would have made images of James Dean. Probably Andy did, didn't he? He probably did a James Dean picture.
And so did you meet Andy Warhol?
Yeah, quite often, about 8 times.
Yeah.
We met probably 8 times, and we probably exchanged about 6 words over the 8. Because he was very reticent, and because he didn't talk, I didn't talk back.
Yes.
So we'd meet, we'd be introduced, and then he'd forget we'd met, and I did meet him quite often.
What about Robert Indiana? Because his imagery, the love, is also...
Well, I've never met Indiana, and apparently I did something like that he objected to, but I did use the word love before Bob Indiana did.
Yes.
In the love wall it says love, so he ripped me off, really.
Right.
I didn't rip him off.
I like that story.
Yeah.
Tell me about the diamond dust, because people love all the sparkly.
Well, the diamond dust, the original diamond dust prints, Paul Stolper, Andy used it. Andy used it really as diamond dust first.
Yeah.
Paul Stolper put a portfolio together about 5 years ago I did one, Gavin Turk did one, Peter Saville. So it was a portfolio of about 6 artists. And then I suggested, I went on and did my own portfolio.
Yes.
And that's the series with, there are 2 of the Beatles, there are 2 Elvis ones.
Yeah.
And that's an ongoing way of working. We're doing a new series at the moment.
Yes, yeah. I particularly like your new series with Marilyn in them. She's very beautiful and charismatic and
Which
sparkly.
one is that?
Well, there's this series with the black
Yeah.
Marilyn.
No, well, there's a new, because there's a newer Marilyn than that. I thought you might mean that one.
The Blue Door.
No, you haven't seen it yet. It's a series called Star,
Right.
and it's 6 images, and there's a kind of distressed wooden background, and then an image of each person, and then a little star. So, but they haven't been shown yet. They're new ones.
That'd be something to look forward to.
Something to look forward to, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming,
Okay.
and it's great art, and we've loved exhibiting it.
But they look very good here. I'm pleased to see them.